This is Providence Television International, the game changer.
Welcome to Issues in the News on Providence Television International. I am Ugbebo Ikekwa. Today, we have quite a trending topic. Majority of Nigerians are actually getting the pinch. They are actually feeling the serious pinch of our economic policies. We'll be talking about the rising cost of living in Nigeria. And we'll be to discuss this topic today is the chairman, Chief Executive Officer, Providence Television International, Dr. Emmanuel Egariba. You're welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Always a pleasure of mine to be here. Thank you very much.
Before we delve into this topic, let's take this commercial.
Join us today to celebrate a remarkable milestone, 15 incredible years of Karam Travels Limited. It's our honor today before you, reflecting on our journey and looking forward to the exciting opportunities ahead. First and foremost, we want to express our deepest gratitude to each and every one of you. Your trust, loyalty, and support have been the driving force behind our success. We're proud to have served thousands of travelers, creating unforgettable memories and fostering lifelong relationships. Over the past 15 years, we've navigated the ever-changing landscape of the travel industry.
A bag of rice presently sells at over 100,000. Sir, if you tell people, some individuals outside this country, that about 10-15 years ago a bag of rice was selling for 6,500, they'll find it very difficult to believe. What do you think have been the causes for these inflationary tendencies that Nigerians presently face?
Well, a lot of factors. First of all, the issue of the weak currency is very apparent. And when you talk about a weak currency, you must talk about inflation, and you must talk about lopsided economic policies, okay? And then, of course, the issue of security, right? In the last few years, we've had insecurity in many parts of the country, particularly in what we often refer to as the food basket of this nation. Bandits obviously have taken over 70% of those farmlands, and the farmers have not returned in full, so they're still much away from their farmland. So these are issues. And I think that if you put all of this together, we have a very huge problem on our hand. I mean, a problem that just wouldn't go away. It's always there, it's always trending, but I thought we'd just mention it today because it's getting worse, really. It's getting worse, and experts have predicted that this year, food prices will go higher still. So I'm worried, just like many Nigerians. I'm really worried.
And it brings us to this fact. We've always seen successive governments. For every time there is a successive government, it gets worse than the past government.
That's an irony, really. I've often talked about this. I mean, you talked about rice just now, a bag of rice. When Jonathan was here, it was about 6,500,
Yes.
at most 7,000, a good brand. I mean, I used to buy it myself, and my wife was the happier for it. I used to buy a half bag for about 3,500 or thereabout. And that was just great. You couldn't finish it even within a month. You couldn't. And it was a good brand. I don't want to mention the brand because they're not going to pay for it. But you see, yes, you're right. Successive governments, even fuel, for instance, when Buhari was here the other day, fuel was much lower. Now we have the regime that is quite prohibitive, price regime that's quite prohibitive. You're still dancing around 1,000. And all of that.
Yes.
And surprisingly, people say that the prices are going down. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the differential is not anything to write home about. So we have issues. Put all of these things together, is the people that suffer. They are always at the receiving end. At a time when our leaders are living in opulence, okay? When our leaders exhibit all kinds of traits that are inimical to the interests of this nation. So Nigerians are worried. They are hungry, therefore they have very good reason to be angry. Okay, I just pray that this anger doesn't tip over. Okay.
Okay, it's been trending for quite some time. That's what, because you mentioned fuel now, and it's been trending for quite some time. That has the subsidy actually been removed? What's your take?
Well, a lot of people have said that openly, that we're just dancing in circles, that the subsidy seems to them that the subsidy truly has not been removed. But that is even less worrisome. What is more worrisome is the fact that we have 4 refineries in this country working at the moment, we are told. 3 owned by NNPC and the other, of course, by Dangote. But the price is not coming down. That is the issue. I thought by now we'll be dancing within the range of about 300 and all of that. And I've often said it on this station that once the price of fuel goes down, all other things will crumble into it. But it has remained stagnant. And look at the indices. I mean, justifiably from inflation and commodity price index. When you're talking about commodity price index, you must talk about the daily survival of our people. And they are affected by foodstuff, goods and services, rent, transportation, medication, school fees, and all of that. So they are always at the receiving end. But that also means that we must do something urgently to be able to change the trend. Otherwise, we have a very terrible situation on our hands that could boomerang into other areas that we do not pray for.
Well, we're looking at rising cost of living. So many people have always talked about the increment of minimum wage. Nigeria at the time complained that it was tricked into agreeing to the 70,000 thing. Do you think that the increment in the minimum wage also affects the rising cost of living?
Of course, yes. Why must you? In fact, I've said it over and over again that look, if government is serious, it must not even announce salary increase.
Okay.
Yes, because once you do, the market woman is waiting for you. The landlord is waiting for you, and all of that. The pharmacist is also waiting for you. So, but I think usually they want to make political capital out of this, which is not necessary, I mean, as far as I'm concerned. What I think government should have been doing is to increase allowances.
Okay.
Transportation allowances, medication and things like that. Housing. Let them increase these allowances, unknown to the people who sell goods and services, unknown to the market woman. But suddenly, we now make capital out of it. We're going to increase from 30,000 to 40,000 to 7,000 or whatever. And they are waiting. Because they must also get a big chunk for their own benefit. So, but that's the way it is. The labor people, they themselves are not particularly serious because they've been boxed into a corner. And I'm happy that Ajero has said that he was tricked into it. Now, they cannot go back to government to say that 70,000 is not enough. Whereas 30,000 that we were talking about could just have been left as it was, then increase the allowances unknown to the market people, because market forces will eat up all these things anyway. Let's face it. So that's my idea, and I think the government must think seriously about this. When else you are thinking of salary increase, leave salary increase. Talk about the allowances, because that's where all the action is. Okay? Yes.
And then what about the price control system? We seem to have none in Nigeria.
There was in times past, but as it worked, it didn't work. I mean, price control, for instance, yes, we had it, particularly during the military. It didn't work during the military, let alone during the civilian administration. Now, if you have a price control board or whatever, let's look at it. The market woman will tell you that, look, what she's selling is affected by high cost of transportation. And you cannot dispute that. A couple with that is that, the people running transport will also tell you that the roads are bad. So it's a vicious circle. And you cannot control it. I mean, it's something obviously that you cannot control. Even rent tribunal in those days didn't work because if you say a room now, I'm not talking of the past, if you say a room now will cost about, how much? 5,000, 6,000, and the tenant goes to the tribunal to say that, the landlord is saying I should pay 10,000 or 7,000 or whatever it is. The landlord will go there and say he wants to use his place. Yes, he wants that. You can't do otherwise, but to grant him the request. He wants to use it for his personal benefit. Now, if it retakes, if he repossesses his property, it's going to give it out to another person who is ready and willing. Okay? So it's It's a sore point, and I don't think it's workable. It's not workable at all. That's why government is not even attempting to go there.
Okay,
Because
that's
they know
as
it
regards
won't work.
rent.
Yes.
If we remember, like something like in the US and the UK, I think the price of chicken still has remained static for like 20 years. Less than $1.
Yeah, because yes, I'm happy you asked this question because the dollar has been stable.
Oh.
It will continue to be stable. The pound is stable.
Hmm.
Euro is stable. All those international currencies, they are very stable. In the last 20 years, the dollar has been the same. So if you must have differential, maybe a few cents, maybe 1, 2, 3, or 5 cents, okay? But in Nigeria, I mean, look at the Naira now. It's one of the weakest currencies in Africa. Once your currency is weak, you are making room for inflation. I mean, it's a natural thing, natural phenomenon. Once your currency is weak, it means that you cannot compete favorably in terms of goods and services. Okay, and we are dependent so much on imports. Virtually everything we import in this country, raw materials, for instance. In fact, that's why the Manufacturing Association is crying every day. That look, all their raw materials virtually come from abroad, and that's where I think that we should devote our time now to agricultural resources. All right, once we pay more attention to the agricultural sector, some of these things will go down. In any case, look at it. The solution, I thought you were going to ask me that the solution to the food crisis now is to subsidize.
Okay.
Yes, to subsidize, just as we were subsidizing fuel. You subsidize, what does that mean? Throw the borders open. Yes, government will buy, and then you subsidize and you sell to the people. Okay? That's subsidy in some sense. And a lot of countries have done this around the world to survive. And we can do that. While we are doing that, we are also making sure that our local production is rising up on a regular basis. So the two must go side by side. You don't depend on just importation. You must also develop local production. But I think that government, particularly state government, they can do this. I mean, some state government used to do this. In the last few years, they will stockpile from all sources. And then, particularly during the week, maybe weekend, they will now sell to people at subsidized rates.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what should happen.
Does the issue of insecurity affect the rising cost of living?
Of course it does. It does. In fact, so eminently. I'm sure you heard what I said a little while ago, that the food basket is gone. Those states, Niger, Benue, Plateau, Bauchi, within that axis, most of them have been driven away from their farmlands. They cannot produce at the optimum level. Therefore, what that means is that we cannot get much from them, from those places. And the effect is that there will be inflation, because the little you have will be affected by prices. I mean, look at those things, for instance. We can get them. Yeah, they are there in the market, but what of our purchasing power?
Exactly.
Okay? Yams, potatoes, rice, beans, and all sorts of things. You will see them in the market. That's the irony. Okay? But what of your purchasing power? You can't purchase them. Okay? You can't, because how much you are earning 50,000 or whatever, how much is that going to give you? How much of this will give you?
You have to buy a bag of rice.
Some women have said it openly, that 5,000 cannot give them a pot of soup. Yes. And even for workers, you hold 1,000, you cannot get a good meal for 1,000. I've just been told, I was told only this morning by someone, that young people, young adults, they buy, what do you call this thing? Is it Santana they call it?
Oh, yes.
Santana.
Yes.
They buy Santana without meat.
Very true.
Yes.
Very true.
Oh, so you know that.
Oh.
They buy Santana without meat. Yeah, just some watery soup and all of that. They drink plenty of water just to keep life going.
Exactly.
And they do that on a regular basis. In fact, most people now eat breakfast around 12.
So it carries them.
PM. So it carries them up into the evening. And then they have the other one 2 times a day. I'm not too sure many Nigerians now can eat 3 times a day. For them, it's not possible. Why? Because they don't have the purchasing power. They cannot, even for housewives, 5,000 cannot give them a good pot of soup. It cannot. How are you going to do it? How?
And that brings me to my next question. The Minister of Finance, Wale Edun, we'll see his picture very soon. That's Wale Edun, the Minister of Finance. And the Governor of the Central Bank, Yemi Cardoso, they keep telling us that the economy is improving.
What are the indicators? I mean, it's a very funny country we're living in. You must, whatever they say, must be in tandem with indicators. The inflation is rising, by the way, and many more people are getting to the poverty web. That's one strong indicator. And they are saying something else. Sometimes I wonder if they even live in this country, these people you are talking about, because they must know that there is hunger in the land, that there is suffering in the land. They must know that. And that's the way. I mean, somebody yesterday told me that we are living in a country where governments have become governments of, what do you call them now? Palliatives. Yes, we now have governments of palliatives in this country. But what pains me, even as I'm talking to you now, only a few days ago, we had an ex-head of state, General Babangida,
Exactly.
who launched a book, and at that occasion, over 17 billion
Yes.
was raised in a country that is so heavily impoverished. I mean, it was scandalous. For instance, I mean, I thought that these people who donated such money could have come together into a hub and said, look, this 17 billion or more, because many of them have much more, let us use it to alleviate the problems of poor people in Nigeria. They won't do that. I mean, look at the power sector, for instance. It's going down the drain. Okay? The roads have not been fixed. Tankers are falling off the roads on a daily basis, on a regular basis, I must say. There are so many things. I mean, children are getting out of school. Parents can no longer pay school fees. Right? It is happening right before our eyes. And people were doling out billions, for a project that's neither here nor there. So many people felt scandalized because of that. At this point in time, when Nigeria should be thinking of moving the country forward, let me even tell you this. I feel a sense of apprehension when I get to know, and people get to know this, that Nigeria is still wearing the toga of a developing country. Now look at Nigeria side by side with a country like Brazil, South Korea, Singapore, Malaysia. We're all on the same platform. A few years ago, they've left Nigeria behind. Nigeria is possibly the only one among these countries I've just mentioned that is still wearing the perfume of developing country. Whereas Brazil is now making its own submarines. Yes. They are preparing now to go to space. Many years ago, a few years ago probably, Brazil was also a developing country like Nigeria. Okay? But in our own space, we are talking about a country that is subjected to all kinds of agonies. All right.
Let's go back to IBB, because you mentioned him. If you remember, it was during his time that he took that loan from the IMF. Was that the beginning of our woes?
Of course, yeah, because he brought in SAP, remember?
Exactly, Structural Adjustment Program.
And that is why, in fact, it was just lucky, because I think it was in I can't remember exactly now. It was in
86, 87.
87, thereabout. IBB must go.
Yes.
In fact,
that was in the 90s.
They said IBB must go.
IBB must go.
Yes.
Babangida must go, exactly.
That's what made him move from Durham Barracks to Abuja. He ran away to Abuja because millions of Nigerians spontaneously they went onto the street that IBB must go. Why? Because they were feeling the pinch. SAP, Structural Adjustment Program, as engineered by IMF. And nobody prays to have these things from IMF. It's almost like a death trap, IMF and the World Bank. Look at the young man in Burkina Faso. He has refused to take any loan from wherever because they set you moving on the path of self-destruct. Yes, that's what happened, particularly developing countries. And in any case, it is only developing countries that will dance around IMF and the World Bank. Okay? And they will give you all kinds of conditionalities. They will tell you pay over a long distance of time. But the debt is there. You're going to be paying. Don't forget, time was in this country when about half of our budget was used to repay our loans.
And the most troublesome thing is that we still keep borrowing, and they're ready to give.
Of course, if you're a creditor, you'll be willing to give loan to debtors. You'll be willing because it's going to pay you interest. That's where they make their money from, anyway. Okay? And borrowing is now from different sources, even from African Development Bank.
Yes.
You know, it's from IMF, it's from World Bank, it's from African Development Bank, even from individuals. But what I'm saying is that, look, when a nation has a whole army of hungry people, chances are that you lose your sovereignty. And one of the key issues when we consider that people are now moving out to different climes is hunger. People are hungry. And unfortunately, in the last few years, the situation in Europe and America was slightly better. I mean, people could send in $50, $100. How many people are sending $100 now? It is difficult, even for those who are resident in Europe. So there's stagnation as far as that is concerned. And that's not too good for our psyche and for our well-being.
And so on the final
Nigerians.
note, what would be the, I don't know if I should use the word antidote, the solution to this rising cost of living?
Bring the price of fuel down. I don't know why they're refusing to do that. Bring the price of fuel down, because everything radiates around that. Look, the price of fuel has affected so many things, so many things. We cannot begin to list them here. And the naira is weak. If you show up the value of the naira, everything goes down as well. I'm happy though that in the last few days, the naira has come up a little bit, but it's still radiating around a specific figure as against the dollar. So my take is, I think it's a question of willpower on the side of government. Let's forget about hubris. Let's face this in head on, okay? There should be no policy, yes, we say policy somersault, but we're not talking about that. Let us face it squarely. What do the people want? You give the people what they want. I mean, that's what you call compassion. Yes, inside the web, inside the base of the web, for example. Give the people what they want. Everybody has been trumpeting this. Once the price of fuel goes down, transportation will come down. Yes, it's only natural. Yes, goods and services will come down.
Okay.
And then, of course, let us work assiduously towards raising the value of the naira as against other foreign currencies.
I think our viewers out there will want to know your view on this. We produce fuel here. We have the crude here. Why do we need to go down to OPEC, to the prices, that it must be the barrel to the dollar?
There are many oil-producing countries that are not members of OPEC.
Okay.
Yes, many. Why must Nigeria continue to be a member of a cartel? We must have our own destiny in our own hands, for goodness sake. Yeah, nobody is going to send an incubus against Nigeria if we move ourselves out of OPEC. No, many countries have done that, and they are still surviving. Why must we? Okay, and they will tell you, the funny thing is, I mean, now that we even have 4 refineries working, somebody is even going to tell you, they have told us in the recent past that, look, we are still talking about the dollar value to our own production,
Exactly.
which to me doesn't make sense. In fact, it's only the Dangote that was trying to break the jinx the other day. I don't know if he has been sucked into this malaise, but that's what the situation is. And it's painful because, I mean, look at it. We're a nation of 200 million people, or possibly more. All right. If we don't talk about agricultural resources, if we don't talk about industrialization, we lose the capacity to develop. And above all, power.
Exactly.
Power.
We'll leave that.
We won't leave that because it's one of the...
It's a major topic for another day.
Have we not talked about it so often on this one? It's becoming monotonous.
Exactly.
Because we have said it over and over again. That, look, we must develop the power sector.
Exactly.
Because once we do, there will be room for young people to do things without depending so much on public supply, you know, or rather without depending so much on generators and things like that. Yes. And lastly, let me also say this. The banking system, I think, is upside down now. Upside down in the sense that we must make room for soft loans for entrepreneurs. No burden entrepreneur will go now pounding his chest that he has already received some money from the bank within the framework of a single-digit interest. No, double digit. And when we were growing up, I remember in those days, single digits, 2%, 3%, almost interest-free. Yes, in this same country, almost interest-free, 2%. Now, you'll be lucky to have a loan that draws an interest of about 30%, some up to 40%. How are you going to repay that? So it is inimical to our national interest, and it is also inimical to the development of entrepreneurship in this country.
Well, on this note, thank you so much, sir, for coming to the studio. On this note, because we just talked about the banking sector, within the week, thoughts and visions of Emmanuel Egariba will be looking at the issue of the banking sector and the Nigerian populace. Once again, thanks for watching. Please stay tuned.